On behalf of US-India Import Council and US Commercial Service, this is Nallore Srinivasan warmly welcoming all of you. USIIC is a unique not-for-profit organization serving specific requirements of importers in India and acting as an intermediary organization to facilitate partnership between Indian and American businesses. USIIC plays a critical role in promoting economic growth between the US and India, with a key focus on helping Indian importers source from US and US exporters export to India. Our genesis goes back to post-US President's visit to India in 2010. The US Department of Trade and Commerce, well thought with founded directors of USIIC, to form a council for Indian importers to source from the US and US exporters export to India. Today, we have a very interesting topic for the webinar, cybersecurity, the need of the hour. Whether it's pre-COVID or post-COVID, protecting our intellectual property information has been at the heart of any digital company's repute and operations. Hackers have not even spared systems that house vaccine formulae in today's world of attacks. Cybersecurity is critical, and today more than ever, nation-state attacks and supply chain attacks are top on the list. Now it's my proud privilege to introduce the Honorable Consul General, Mr. David J. Ranz, who has kindly consented to inaugurate this event. David J. Ranz, U.S. Consul General, Mumbai, is a native of New York and a career diplomat since 1992. Mr. Ranz is the Consul General of the United States of America in Mumbai. A member of the Senior Foreign Service, Mr. Ranz previously served as a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and Maldives in the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, and as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Pakistan. Prior to that, Mr. Ranz was the Director of the Office of Pakistan Affairs. Mr. Ranz's previous assignments include Saudi Affairs, AI, Acting Deputy Chief of Mission and Counselor for Political Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, and Spokesman and Counselor for Public Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, Iraq. Mr. Ranz has also served in Rabat, Morocco, Jerusalem, and Karachi. Mr. Ranz was the 2004 recipient of the U.S. Department of State's Edward Salzman Award for International Economic Performance and 2013 runner-up for the James Clement Benn Award for Excellence. Mr. Ranz has also received 6 State Department Superior Honor Awards and the U.S. Department of Honorary Commanders Award for Public Service from General Retired David Patriots. Mr. Ranz graduated summa cum laude from Yale University in 1991 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science and received a Master in Public Policy degree from the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs at the Princeton University in 2005. Mr. Ranz is married to Tali Lin, a Foreign Service officer with a U.S. Agency for International Development, and has 2 children. He speaks Arabic, French, and Hebrew. Over to Mr. David J. Ranz.
Good morning to all of you who have joined from the US, and a very good evening to our Indian participants. And thank you so much, Srinivasan, for your warm welcome and kind introduction. I'd like to congratulate the US-India Importers Council for organizing this discussion on cybersecurity. Before I speak about cybersecurity, I want to address the issue that has been on all of our minds for the past weeks, the COVID situation here in India. Our hearts go out to the people of India as they navigate the current surge of COVID cases. Living here in Mumbai, my colleagues at the Consulate and I see firsthand the devastation and seriousness of the crisis. The Consulate community is grappling with illness, tragedy, and loss, as I know many of you are. COVID is taking a terrible toll on people throughout India, across South Asia, and around the world. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the United States has worked closely with India to facilitate the movement of essential materials and address bottlenecks in supply chains. In this time of urgency, we continue to collaborate with our Indian partners at the highest levels to combat the pandemic. And we are working with India to expand global vaccination, manufacturing, and delivery. In fact, last Thursday, we saw the first arrival of US military flights to India, delivering key supplies to help India fight this scourge. 5 more relief flights have arrived since then. The support we are providing includes an initial delivery of 1,100 oxygen cylinders, 1,700 oxygen concentrators, military-grade oxygen generator units, 15 million N95 masks, 1 million rapid diagnostic tests, and 20,000 treatment courses of the antiviral drug remdesivir. More flights are on the way, with the total assistance expected to exceed $100 million. On the vaccine front, the United States has redirected its own order of AstraZeneca manufacturing supplies to India. This will enable India to manufacture over 20 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine. In addition, we are reviewing options to share existing AstraZeneca doses with other countries as they become available, including India. This could allow an additional supply of up to 60 million vaccine doses over the next 2 months. In addition to all of this, medical experts from the US Centers of Disease Control are working hand in hand with India's experts in areas like surveillance and epidemiology, bioinformatics for genomic sequencing and modeling, infection prevention and control, vaccine rollout, and risk communication. Just as India sent assistance to the United States when our hospitals were strained early in the pandemic, the US is determined to help India in its time of need. The pandemic will not be over for anyone until it is over for everyone. In light of the ongoing surge, you might ask, now is not the time to talk about cybersecurity. But I believe that as we work to overcome the dire and immediate crisis around us, we must also address medium and long-term risks, cybersecurity among them. We will emerge from COVID, and when we do, the world won't be the same. COVID has already brought unprecedented opportunities for the technology sector to digitize traditional offline services for new online marketplaces. With an increased reliance on IT solutions and platforms, such as the one we're using today, bad actors also have more opportunities to disrupt our economies and the new social, personal, medical, and other areas of our lives. It is no surprise that with more people at home using personal computers and Wi-Fi routers, new and significant cyber threats have emerged. As shown in recent reports from India's Cybersecurity Agency, Computer Emergency Response Team of India, or CERT-IN, there has been a dramatic increase in the number of cyber attacks on personal computer networks and routers since the pandemic began. The government of India has made expansion of the digital economy a priority under the Digital India Initiative and National E-Governance Plan. As Digital India encourages Indian citizens to use IT-based solutions, it is equally important for the government to recognize vulnerabilities and adopt solutions that minimize cyber attacks. Cybersecurity is the responsibility of every organization with IT infrastructure, including state and local and national government. The panelists with us today are the real experts, and I will leave it to them to tell you more. Before turning it over to them, I will underscore that bilateral cooperation between India and the United States in the cybersecurity field is strong and growing. The US and India have held several official bilateral cyber dialogues intended to create a framework for exchanging ideas, discussing cross-border cyber policies and strategies, and enhancing efforts to combat cybercrime. The continuing dialogue on trade and technology will help both countries promote a strong, resilient digital economy. Finally, I would like to highlight 2 events that may be of further interest to you. This year, the Select USA Investment Summit will be held on July 7 through 11 on a specially designed virtual platform to maximize interaction across time zones and allow delegates from around the world to participate. We are pleased to announce that U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, will host the 2021 Select USA Investment Summit. Secretary Raimondo was recently sworn in as our nation's 40th Secretary of Commerce. She will be joined at the summit by nearly 30 state governors. I mention this here as you may be interested in particular in the special tech startup programming on the agenda. Select USA Tech offers unique opportunities for early stage and startup tech companies to attend the investment summit at a discounted ticket price. Participants can attend the Investment Academy to learn about incentives for new companies. They can schedule one-on-one meetings with key financiers, advisors, and experts. and even participate in plenary sessions with states, government, and cabinet level officials in the Biden-Harris administration. The second event is the Cybersecurity Business Development Trade Mission, scheduled to visit New Delhi and Mumbai from November 8 to 12, 2021, along with optional stops in Bangalore and Hyderabad if the COVID situation allows. The purpose of this trade mission to India, organized by the United States Department of Commerce International Trade Administration, is to introduce U.S. firms to rapidly expanding markets for cybersecurity products and services in India. By participating in an official U.S. industry delegation, U.S. companies can make valuable industry contacts, join meetings with governmental interlocutors, and network with a range of specialists. For more information about either of these events, please reach out to any of the members of the commercial service here tonight. I am sure that we're going to have a wonderful presentation tonight and learn more about opportunities in the cyber sector that can benefit both India and the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed a warm inaugural address from David J. Ranz. Thank you, sir, for setting the ball rolling for this event. And we really appreciate the kind of courtesy and the help that is flowing down from the US towards this pandemic situation. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the keynote address. What does a homicide lawyer and a security powerhouse in common? The answer is Edna Conway. Edna Conway currently serves as VP and Chief Security and Risk Officer at Azure at Microsoft. She is responsible for the security resilience and governance of the cloud infrastructure upon which Microsoft Intelligent Cloud Business operates. She has built new organizations, delivering trust, transparency, cybersecurity, compliance, risk management, sustainability, and value chain transformation. Prior to joining Microsoft, Conway served as Cisco's Chief Security Officer, Global Value Chain, driving a comprehensive security architecture across Cisco's third-party ecosystem. She is recognized domestically, US presidential commissions, and globally NATO as the developer of architectures, delivering value chain security to the Executive Committee of the US Department of Homeland Security Task Force on ICT supply chain risk management. Our insight is featured in a range of publications, analyst reports, and case studies, including Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg, CIO Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal. Conway is on the board of directors of many reputed companies and institutions. An influential speaker, our venues span government, industry, and academia, including Harvard University, Stanford University. She has also been featured in extensive media coverages. Now I welcome Edna Conway to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you so much. On behalf of myself personally and Microsoft, I want to thank you for inviting us to join your important discussion today. And I want to add my heartfelt thoughts to the people of India, so many of whom are near and dear to us at Microsoft, as you deal with the global pandemic, and know that not only are our prayers and thoughts with you, but we are committed to support as well. You know, we have this wonderful opportunity today to think about the world in which we live. And that world, I like to say, is a world of digital platforms. We talked a little bit already about the economy and how we've moved to a digital environment. But these digital platforms are a group of technologies that are used really as a base on which other applications, processes, or technologies are developed. And quite frankly, they're pervasive. They're pervasive in industry, in our personal lives, from integrated factories leveraging a single platform for visibility to their operations, to healthcare, to our own personal use of on-demand transportation platforms. But what I want us to think about a little bit today is, if you're going to embrace cyber, what you need to think about is the foundations of that digital platform in which the world operates. And there are two: cloud and mobility. And as a result, what I think we need to do is really change our lens and our focus to something that you already heard about today, and we'll talk about more: operational resilience. So let's shift to the reality that we work as a world digitally. The digital environment lives on these platforms. How can we make ourselves operationally resilient? Because today we live in a world of we. The thoughts of us and them no longer exist. We are one. And as our cloud platform, certainly at Microsoft, is woven into the very fabric of our customers' businesses, we are committed to delivering that operational resilience to support our customers' mission and regulatory compliance. Let's step back for a minute and talk about something I want you to all be aware of. What are the critical sources of security risk? Certainly ourselves. But if you think about it, you can try to break it down into 5 basic groups. So you might have a careless worker, an employee or a contractor. You may have a disgruntled or angry employee. You also may have some of your own insiders in your enterprise or government agency who are actually intentionally malicious. They're stealing information for personal gain. You also have, for us, we think about the cloud customers' adversaries. So here we say, you know, our customers actually bring their own adversaries to our environment. How can we make sure that we're prepared for that reality? And then finally, what I want to spend a little more time talking about is the hacked third party. You heard our colleagues already open up this discussion by pointing out that there have been more and more attacks, and so many of them focus on third parties as the source. As we rely more on one another, we have to think about one another in a unique way. I've looked at some surveys over the last decade, and 84% of colleagues have actually faced a third-party incident in the prior 3 years, and that hasn't changed over the last decade. And over the last decade, an average of about 74% of security incidents are actually, where you can attribute them, attributed to a third party. That's an intriguing statement. And that statement says that we now live in a world of we. No longer us and them. What are we going to do about it? And I'm going to suggest that as you're engaging in your business, you start to think about with whom you're doing business. What platforms are you relying on? Do the third parties with whom you are working and you yourself in your own environment have a comprehensive architectural approach to both security and resilience? So think about setting some customized security requirements and resiliency requirements, and then embedding those concepts, if you will, into the way in which you do business. It can be in your supplier metrics. It can be in your development life cycle. If you're actually designing and developing something, it can be in your logistics and transportation platforms as you move goods throughout your environment. All of that needs to be thought of as a unified environment with singular security and resiliency requirements. What does that do for us? Well, it allows us to start to build this concept of operational efficiency in a digital world into the very way in which we operate. So for us here at Azure, in Microsoft, I'm building it into the very DNA of Azure. And ultimately, I will have empirical data to show and prove that we can be a trusted platform. As a consumer of something like a cloud service, I would argue that what you need to do is think about and ask your cloud service providers and your other third parties, what are they doing? What is your plan? How do you approach this? How do you define the life cycle of what you deliver? And for us, that life cycle starts right at research and experimentation through design and the planning and the sourcing and the actual production, the delivery and the sustainment and end of service. Obviously, that manifests itself inside of the data center and the edge devices that afford the productivity of that cloud. But let's put that aside for a minute. So we've talked about this architectural approach. Sounds really great. What should it actually include? And I think it has to include multiple layers. And I'm really going to talk about security here, but I'll add a little bit about resiliency. So for security, something that certainly will resonate with one of the colleagues here today with us, Sona Srinivasan, whom I have the privilege to work with at Cisco. I think about security comprehensively. So no longer can we look at it in isolation. We have to have information security and behavioral security, how we operate as humans, intellectual property protection, the ticket to our innovation, physical security, logical operational security, and privacy, all in that one architectural domain. I think the other thing we want to think about is a similar approach to how we look at resiliency. And so I wanted to just give you a little bit of insight into that. So for us, what I've defined is, the way to say it is, how can we continue to engage in our business at a world-class level? What does that take? So it takes looking at comprehensive requirements for business continuity and disaster recovery, where we find ourselves today, labor and human rights, environmental sustainability, human health and safety, we care about that first and foremost, export and trade controls, they often can catch you in a way that will preclude the innovation that you've brought to fruition from being shared with others. And also very much focused on anti-bribery and anti-corruption. So those sound like daunting challenges, but if you actually engage in an approach that allows you to say, here are some basic requirements for security, here are my basic requirements for resiliency. Now you have a model, you have an architecture. You haven't done anything with it yet, right? You've just written it. So what we've done is we've said we want to drive this. Remember, we live in a world of we, both with our third parties, as well as our own internal family inside of Azure at Microsoft. So to do that, we've actually delivered the model to each of our family members, whether inside or outside, and said, we're going to explain it to you. We're going to write, if you will, what I like to call the book of security and resiliency. And it has chapters, security chapters, and we call them domains and subdomains. And it also has resiliency domains or chapters. And those allow you to start to educate and drive consistency on things like identity and access management, or physical security, or what are you doing on that manufacturing shop floor? So we have about 18 or 20 security domains. And then what we've done is we've looked at the same way as at resiliency. And I know we are time constrained, so I want to make sure that I get this point across. So you have an architecture now. You've embraced that whole community, outside and in. How are you going to drive it? And I think the way to drive it is based on what it is that is undertaken by your outside community and your inside community. So we call those activities. And after about 3 months of evaluation, I identified just about 17 different activities that underpin the core functionality of our intelligent cloud platform. You can do the very same thing in your businesses and ask your third parties what they're doing. And then we deploy those requirements meaningfully, with patience, with guidance. So it's not prescriptive. Can you achieve this goal? How are you achieving this goal? And you validate that. And most importantly, you need to be prepared to be flexible, because new attacks, new opportunities for those who would do harm to leverage their own innovation will arise. And we need to respond to those. So not only do we need to defend and prepare, but we need to move operationally, swiftly, and resiliently to address new things on the horizon. So I know we're at about time. I want to just leave you with a couple of thoughts. What does the future look like? I think the future looks great. I think I'm very optimistic on purpose. And that optimism comes from a couple of things. Digital transformation is really changing the approach to cybersecurity, and we now have 2 generations or core of digital natives on the planet, and they are our future. And we can leverage our artificial intelligence and machine learning improvements to actually continue to not only grow, but make security fundamental. You know, I always say we teach our children to look both ways when they cross a street because we want them not to be hit by traffic. We have begun the process of not only teaching our children, but teaching our colleagues how to think about embedding security in this way. There is both an opportunity and a risk with the growth of 5G and the Internet of Things and the connected devices it brings. If we approach those with security in mind, we can reap the productivity and the benefit of those enhancements and lock down the security that is necessary to ensure that productivity is delivered unencumbered, uninterrupted, and without disruption. We all live with supply chain risks. Those continue to increase. And the best thing I can tell you is know who you're working with and understand what their processes are. Because at the end of the day, there really is only one currency in a digital economy, and it's trust. And to build trust, you need to understand what's being done and be able to be somewhat transparent. Not share intellectual property, but be transparent about your architecture, as I'm sharing with you here today, how we approach it, what we're doing, where we think challenges exist. And for us, that biggest challenge, as you all know, it's the challenge for the world, is how we're going to deal with the post-quantum world and security and what post-quantum does to cryptography. So we are working on that inside of an organization that I'm part of, and I have the privilege of watching that grow. And I think that's an opportunity for the future, but we need to keep our eyes on it at best. So I'd leave you with this. Weave an operational resilience model for your business, for your communities, for your governments, and build that operational resilience on action. Never be monolithic. Think flexibly about the different types of activities that go on in your environment, but then align. Align holistically with those who are outside, with those who are inside, and use the concepts of zero trust and the concepts that have long existed, like the principle of least privilege, and deploy them relentlessly with care, and grant access to those who need to have that access. It is a fundamental tool that we have in our kit. It's the same thing we all do. And I always like to leave you, and I'll make you laugh. I've been with my wonderful husband for 47 years. We dated for 7, and we've been together married for a long time. And I always say the principle of least privilege, you don't need to be a cyber expert. Here's how you understand it. Not everything needs to be shared with your spouse. So share only that which is necessary. And with that, I will leave you with the opportunity to share additional information gleaned from the wonderful panelists that have joined us today. Thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you, Edna Conway, for your wonderful speech on the cyber imperative and comprehensive approach to security and resilience. Now we move on to the panel session. Before we start off, let me introduce the Master of Ceremonies and moderator, Sona Srinivasan. Sona is the Director of IT and Cybersecurity at Toyota Research Institute, who started her career in Sprint's R&D labs 16 years ago and went on to work for HP and then Cisco. During her 13.5 years at Cisco as an enterprise architect was where she found a passion for security when she stood up the first application security team for Cisco's 5,000 plus developers during the CI/CD transition and the cloud transformation at Cisco. She has a master's in computer science and information technology. She has extensively looked at security with both the corporate environment and the supply chain, where she helped Cisco revamp their infrastructure towards a more secure architecture and pay off technical IT debt for Cisco's global factories, working with Cisco's manufacturing partners. She finds herself at home solving security problems, whether it be creating policies for a research organization or standing up security tooling for developers or revamping security controls in the factory, balancing operations and innovations. She sees herself as an IT architect and a security ninja. Over to Sona.
So much, Mr. Srinivasan. I'm not sure I can follow the powerhouse Edna Conway after such a phenomenal keynote. Edna, as always, you inspire us, and I love the fact that you placed the book Women Know Cyber very appropriately for this conversation. So as always, you blow me away with your subtle suggestions and make security so easy to palate. We'll actually kick off with a couple of questions to you before we let you wrap up your keynote. And you gently touched on both topics that are close to both of our hearts. One is about quantum and the other is about how to manage our clouds with trust. So let me lay the first question over to you and ask you about your thoughts on how should we think about third-party relationships post the SolarWinds? Because there's been a lot of change in how we do trust, right? The word trust, the currency that you talked about, whether we write a third-party risk assessment or whether we think about our master security specifications, that level of trust is such an imperative. How do we operate post SolarWinds in such a economy?
I think SolarWinds was intriguing because it was not the first supply chain attack we've ever seen. We've been seeing them for years, but it awakened the eyes of the world because of not only the pervasiveness, but some of the unique techniques that were done to try and actually gain access as an authorized administrator, right? So they gained the keys to the kingdom via identity management. So I think I'm going to go back to what I said before, Sona, which is you have to have this comprehensive architecture, but some of the basics are really important. And identity and access was the methodology that was utilized in SolarWinds. Could we have protected against it? Some things were in place that could have. But the reality is, how do you secure that environment and how do you secure your third parties? The answer is you have to speak with them. You have to know what they're doing. You have to understand that. And there's a raging debate in the community right now. Everybody would love to have security automated 100% of the time with real-time continuous checks. We can do some of that without a doubt. And and I know that an assessment or an audit is only good for as long as the moment that that audit is going on, right? You issue a report, you're done. What's done the next day is still unknown. So we need both. And I look at people who sometimes say, well, we can automate all of this all the time. No, you can't. You cannot automate all the time real-time feedback on what's going back on, let's say, a printed circuit board line, a printed circuit board assembly line. Better yet, what's going on you can in a data center. So I think it's a combination of know who you're working with, again, ask them what they're doing, and where you can gain real-time telemetry, gather it, use it, and mine it. That's what I would say are the best solutions moving forward.
Thank you very much. Let me ask you one more question, because it's on everybody's minds as we think about the digital children or the next generation that's around, right? How do we think about quantum as we think about the automation problem? We have excess of data. When I was in grad school, neural networks did not really take off the way it did today because we lacked big data. But now when I think about it, and we have truckloads of data, and we have lots of algorithms that we apply against them to glean out, but where do you think quantum is really going to give us that inception point into a lot of it?
So, quantum is a big, hairy issue. There's no doubt about it. I think its promise is to take high performance and hyperscale compute to a new level. It brings with it some realistic challenges, right? It operates only at almost absolute zero. So it has environmental ramifications, it has space ramifications. I think where we need to go is to wrap ourselves around, there are pretty much two paths to quantum that are being explored right now. I will tell you, Microsoft is firmly in the path of the topological qubit. We're looking at the topological gap. We think that's the path to go. It takes up less space. It has some of the same benefits. There are others who are looking at the physical qubit, and both of those are viable alternatives. But I think, you've asked some intriguing questions. What is the power of quantum? Undoubtedly, it gives us the ability to mine the massive amounts of data that we have in a time frame that is usable, feasible, because we're all drowning in data. I can't tell you the hours in the day that we all spend. You've experienced it, and as have I, and as everyone running a business, where no matter how many applications you have, and no matter how much bandwidth you have, you can't find what you need, or you don't know something because you don't have visibility, because you haven't translated the data that you have into something meaningful for your business utilization, for your government utilization on delivery of capabilities and needs of citizens, whatever it is. So that's where quantum comes in. I think quantum gives us the power to start to answer some of those questions. Imagine where you can pose, I'm a little bit older than you, Sona, and so I'm laughing when you say when I was in grad school they didn't have neural networks. When I was in grad school, they had computers in buildings that you had to go to with punch cards. So the concept of a neural network was, a pipe dream. But imagine where we are today, where you say, Alexa or, Google or Siri, whatever it is, do this. How many of us thought about AI utilized in that personal assistant model? Here's what quantum does. Quantum will get us to, I need to understand the trends that I'm seeing across data that I've gathered over the last 6 months, over 225,000 sites, and I'm making these numbers up, 17,000 third parties. And here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about this, whatever it is. Do they all have business continuity? Or I want to know how many of them have sites that are on earthquake faults. We will be able to get there in a usable time period without using Monte Carlo simulations, have real data without, how confident are we in the analysis we've done? It won't be a confidence level anymore. It'll be exact, empirical, and reliable. That's where I see the exciting part of quantum.
Edna, very beautifully put. I wish, a lot of the dummies books that I buy could break it down this beautifully for all of us a lot better. As always, a privilege to, be on the same forum with you and ask you some of these intriguing conversations. I could not thank you more for your time and for the valuable insights that you've shared with us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do our virtual applause for Edna. And it was a pleasure having you here.
Oh, the privilege was mine. Thank you all. Have a great conference. Bye for now.
And we will now move on to our next speaker. I will now have the privilege of introducing Mr. R.K. Pillai. He's the Managing Director of Aiip Tech Limited. He is currently the Chairman and Founding Director of USIIC, US India Imports Council. He has a BTech in Electronics and Telecommunications from NIIT and has over 3 decades of experience in the field of instrumentation. He's currently partnering with global leaders, Marcraft USA, OEM for cybersecurity solutions, for setting up the Center of Excellence for universities and industries. Over to you, Mr. Pillai.
Thank you very much. And it's a real privilege to be on this forum. My first thanks goes to the entire US community for supporting India at this time by handholding, and we needed love and care, which you have delivered to us at the right time. And I also thank this forum of USIIC, and I would like to tell you that this forum has got 3 levels of communities participating in this: the student community, the professor community, and the industries. So my conversation with you all will be on a platform where cybersecurity will be encrypted with these three for the future: the students, the professors, and the industries. So with that, I will just do a brief presentation, and then we will have some question answers. You can see my screen?
Yes, we can. We can see your desktop.
Yes. So I would go straight on to the important aspect of today's webinar. So what we want to tell the three communities, the student community, the education community, and the industry, that for cybersecurity, we need a complete revolution. There's a huge gap required to meet all these three: the student, the education segment, and the industry. The industry is waiting with open arm to welcome everybody who is skill-based in the cybersecurity, because there is so much of opportunities. So what I would like to tell, with my experience of covering the entire, sort of institutes, what are the requirement of the institutes, what are the requirement of the students, what are the requirement of my industries, with over 3 decades of experience and conversing with all of them, I would like to, sort of briefly tell you what should the Center of Excellence offering should be for both the students and the industry. Today's environment, because of the COVID situation, first of all, it has got into a different dimension. The important thing is that now technical education resources for both remote access and classroom is the prime importance. I repeat once again, technical education resources for both remote access and classroom is a must in looking at it. And with that, for the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, you should have absolute complete laboratory hardware and software with structured curriculum. Very important, with structured curriculum is very important is having a structured curriculum. And the Center of Excellence should have textbook, lab guides, instructor guide materials. Remember that there is so much of gap between the current professors on the cybersecurity platform. They need to be first upgraded them. So we need to focus first on the instructor to upgrade them to the real environment of today. That's why we have to have hands-on experience, internship, and all this should be available today on online. The course material should be online, instructor material on online. The student should be able to get it online. He can do the studies in the classroom, he can do the study at home, both exchange, the instructor can guide them. That facility should be there. Then, now comes the hands-on environment for remotely doing real-time laboratory practicals. That will be the breakthrough for today's environment. Then we also will support, to set up this faculty for workshop for the Center of Excellence. And since cybersecurity is a new program, is a new development, there are so much of opportunities that entrepreneur development program also must be offered by the Center of Excellence. Please keep these things in mind when you are setting up a Center of Excellence. Now, the next thing comes is, when the students do cybersecurity course, they are also worried. What about the jobs? Friends, look at it. You will be surprised that right now there is a huge shortage of cybersecurity experts. There is 3.4 million cybersecurity jobs vacant around. In Asia Pacific itself, there is million jobs, and Europe, there is shortage. In India, there is shortage. Please remember that cybersecurity experts are the most wanted people around the globe, and this is growing at a rapid situation. And what is important for all three, the industry, the students, and the education segment is that you should have the real data, real statistics. It's important to collaborate with have the data, have the statistics. That will help you to take much better standings on this. You can see the growth of cybersecurity required the market size. 2013 is where, and today 21 is here, and it is going to grow at a rate of more than 50% per year. In 2023, this is the growth. We are looking at 50% growth. The jobs, I was only looking at 36,000 in 2018. Today, it is more than 100,000 for India alone. And the salaries are much better compared to any other segment. So what I would tell you students, the faculty and the industry, this is the right time for the cybersecurity expertise to be formed. And these are some of the openings and filled up in the recent past in the many metropolitan places of India. And if you go down to the worldwide, look, there is cybersecurity jobbers. US cybersecurity themselves, they need 521,000 are unfilled. And it goes along with certification. This is the most important, parameter to differentiate from the other segments. It's an important segment. Cybersecurity is very important. They need, qualified, skill-based, certified people for the industry. Industry is looking for certified, qualified, experienced with having skill-based. The openings for the students, industries, look at it: cloud, security vigilance, data analysis, data management, network, financial, software, computer, today medical, crime, everywhere. Every IT job is now a cybersecurity position. Every IT staff must be involved in protecting and defending people, data, apps, and business infrastructure. You are the defender. Today, cybersecurity experts are the defender. They are the second line of defense. Remember that. They come into the category of defense. That's the importance cybersecurity should be given. And this is Edna's colleague, Brad Smith, president of Microsoft, telling the whole world, we have a shortage of cybersecurity professionals. We are going to need a global initiative to accelerate training them. And that's where we are. It's none other than Brad Smith saying that, friends, open up and get into this cybersecurity. The challenge India faces. There's a vast gap between the demand and supply. To help bridge this gap between demand and supply, several top colleges have introduced basic cybersecurity training courses and cybersecurity training certification for students, professionals who have necessary knowledge and knack for this field. So importance is India has got a big challenge ahead, and institutes, students, industries, please look at that. As I said, that importance of certification differentiates a college. What the industry is looking is that these days your knowledge, your experience and skill aren't enough. Employers want proof you have the expertise they need. They want to see your certifications. They want to know you are continually improving your skills to stay up to the latest threats in technology. Cybersecurity is a continuous skill learning platform, as same as the medical industry. I want to just show you what certification makes you different. When somebody has a certification, the meaning is the employer knows that he has got a sufficient knowledge on security layers. He's understood the OS security, he's understood the network security and security software. So the parameters are divided. The degree may not give all these things, but a certification makes it very clear for the industry, and they will welcome qualified people with certifications. These are some of the examples which, even ISACS certificates can help you with. And now coming back to the institute which is having a cybersecurity COE, you have to see that the options of having multiple levels of courses to meet the different segment of the students. Some students want to have 1-year certificates, some 2-year diploma, some 3-year BSc courses, degree courses, master courses, distance learning, faculty development program, industrial training, entrepreneurship, customers. So when you have a center of excellence, you have got multiple facets to see that you meet the demands of various students across the line. Now, next, I just want to make a summary of what a center of excellence matrix should look like. Friends, first of all, divide it into two: IT foundation, cybersecurity essentials, advanced cybersecurity, and forensics. And then you should have a lab for computer lab, network, Internet of Things, coding, database, net, infrastructure, local area, network, IT, industrial, medical, hacking, enterprise, industrial, analysis, pen tester, forensic, CSI, DNA. So you must have approximately 20 lab stations to have a center of excellence. See, people believe that cybersecurity teaching is what? You should have a knowledge of computer, you should have knowledge of networking and some software. No, no, no. You have to have at least a facility to train 200 students at a time in your center of excellence and giving them 1,000 hours of hands-on experience with 540, about 500 plus hands-on practicals. Practicals makes the differentiation. And when you have all these facilities, you are ready for the certification course. So in addition to the college or the institute certificate, the international certificates keeps you ahead of others. I just want to tell you that just have a checklist. Prepare your checklist when you are preparing your center of excellence. Look at the curriculum. Look at the hardware, software, what you are having. Look at the simulators required in the industrial systems. Look at the guides, textbooks written by top authors. Lab practicals. Look at how much you are having and what is required for the center of excellence, which the industry is looking at. LMS support, remote labs, certifications, students per session, and then have, I said, multiple courses in your center of excellence so that return of investment is very, very useful. Next, what do you get of this center of excellence? What do the industry get? What do the students get when you have a cybersecurity center of excellence? You have differentiators and advantages for setting up a cybersecurity and forensic CU. There are 9 reasons which I would put across to you as the faculty members, the college, the industry, and the students. The first of all, COU with the certifications can get a head start with career opportunities. You are already ahead of others. The starting point for the other student without a certification compared to you, you are already 100 meters ahead of them. With that, it helps you. The interview calls, you will get more interview calls compared to the others. Your resume completely changes. You will have the hashtags which will help you to get more interview calls, and when they hire you, the employer's confidence in hiring. They have a ready person for their job. They don't have to spend additional much of a training. The training limits time period is less compared to a non-certified person. Certification gives access to more interesting work and higher salaries. Your own personality changes, your own growth changes. Next, look at certifications. Helps the whole company. The entire organization is this one. Major jobs, again I repeat, requires IT certification. For example, defense. Look at big industries. They look at certification because you know the terms and terminology of what they are looking for. Certification make a career more fulfilling. And finally, I would like to tell you that I'm pleased to tell you that Marcraft USA are willing to support the Indian complete infrastructure, the industry. They are ready to support the students. They are ready to support the institute to set up Center of Excellence. They have got various offers, both financially beneficial, technically beneficial, online beneficial. Please ask us. And I'm sure Marcraft with our alliance and the US Commercial Alliance and the US community are ready to help you. It will boost your ranking, increase quality intake and higher intake, gaining recognition from industries. These are the things which I would like to give a talk about Center of Excellence, how important, and it will be the turning factor for everybody. Thank you, Sona. Thank you, everybody. I will look forward to any additional questions. Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much. There are a bunch of questions on the Q&A panel on the side, which I would request you to answer as your time allows. We will now continue with our next presenter so we can get to our other speakers as well. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. Our next speaker, thank you so much. Our next speaker for today is Mr. Charles J. Brooks. He's currently the co-owner and vice president of Education Technologies Group Incorporated, as well as the co-owner of EIT Prep LLP, an online training company. He's in charge of research and product development at both organizations. Marcraft is a group company of ETG. He's a former electronics instructor and technical writer with National Education Corporation, and Mr. Brooks has taught and written on post-secondary ETG curriculum, including introductory electronics, transistor theory, linear integrated circuits, basic digital theory, industrial electronics, microprocessors, and computer peripherals. Mr. Brooks has also authored several books, including 7 editions of A+ certification training guides, the complete introductory computer course, IBM PC peripheral troubleshooting and repair, and he also writes, and which is also what he's going to talk about, is green technologies, networking, residential technology integration, and IT convergence. He's also associated with various platforms on cybersecurity. So without further ado, over to you, Mr. Brooks, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. There we are. So yes, I have just a short presentation. Let me pop that up. And so let me tell you a little bit about myself. Before I moved into my second career in education and then in technical training, I spent my early life running around in manufacturing facilities ranging from coal mines to chemical plants to industrial processes. So I have a natural attraction to that area. And what I'd like to address in my presentation here is a part of cybersecurity that requires some special expertise, and that one that we're not currently addressing heavily in the rush to produce all of these potential employees that we need in the cyber area. So my slide starts with what a major cyber disaster might actually look like. And what we see here is we see a darkened, empty city. The reason for a condition like this, there, in a cyber sense, there are all kinds of things that a cyber catastrophe can bring along. Stock market computing and communications disruptions, major disruptions of our production systems. In particular interest to me are the disruptions to our utility services and as well as our transportation system. So the critical infrastructure that we have at risk involves industrial processing and manufacturing and chemical, utility services, water, electricity, wastewater, oil and gas, transportation. And normally when I'm lecturing about this, I ask my audience, which cyber thing would you defend first? Or would you put your concentration in protecting the internet? Would you put your concentration in protecting the grid? How about the water system and the wastewater system? And depending on the nature of the audience, my usual response is, oh, we have to have the internet. Well, I tell people I'm over 60, so I can pretty well get along without the internet if I absolutely had to. It would be a different world, but I've survived in that world before. The electrical grid, very important to modern life. However, I've watched enough survival shows to know that I could probably make it without the electrical grid. But what happens to our cities if we lose our water systems and our wastewater systems in particular? Chaos breaks out, disease breaks out, pandemonium breaks out, and we get that first slide that I showed you of a darkened, empty city with total chaos. Well, our production and utility systems are under constant reconnaissance and attacks. A utility might get 100 scans per day looking for vulnerabilities every day. The effect of that is you can see the range of areas where cybersecurity attacks are affecting this. I believe Edna called it this security domain, and you can see that our power and utilities are at the very top. Petroleum and transportation, wastewater. All of these things are things that run in our background and we don't typically think of. We think of them a little more with the current COVID situation we have because we've had so many disruptions from a biological. But imagine if we had a concentrated attack and a set of attacks that took these particular utilities and services out of our lives. The current cost in millions of dollars I've listed on this slide, in that $13 million is spent just mitigating energy and utility attacks. And it just goes down through all kinds of non-traditional IT areas, down through healthcare. So my premise is we're doing lots of training. We're ramping that up as fast as we can. There's some millions of jobs that are open. We're trying to attract people into these training organizations worldwide, and we're teaching them how to defend this, a corporate desktop PC. So how do you defend this? And there might be a good bit of our audience that has no idea what this is or what it does or why it's important. Well, this is a programmable logic controller, and it is the backbone of all the services and utilities that we've listed on the previous slides. It is, if I told you it had RAM and ROM, a microprocessor input and output, most of us would identify that definition as a computer. From the look of it, we probably wouldn't be able to define what it is or what it does. We also wouldn't know that it's a very specialized computer and it's put in applications that don't necessarily function like the things that we're talking about in IT and enterprise networks. As a matter of fact, it has a completely different set of tenets that it's involved in than what we want out of our clouds and our infrastructure for basic IT and personal computing. At a higher level, we teach our students how to protect this, an enterprise network. Nearly every certification book that you'll pick up is dedicated to this very thought. How do I protect an enterprise network? Whether it's CompTIA certification, whether it's a Cisco certification, they're all involved in primarily in this type of network. Well, so have a look at this network and tell me how you're going to defend it, especially when I tell you that in this environment, there is no antivirus, there is no anti-malware, and also you can't put any software on any of these machines that will slow it down in the slightest. Or here in the US, in Pennsylvania, there will be molten metal being poured in the floor in Pennsylvania because the mold didn't arrive on schedule. So it's a completely different environment than we're teaching our IT folks to manage. Also involves complex network systems that involve satellites, it involves telecommunications, cable, every kind of communication, and it all becomes one big network with all of these different technologies tied together and having to work in unison so that the power generated on the left, whether it be traditional power or clean energy, makes it successfully to all the folks that are using it on the right. Here's a comparison of the different components that you'll see between an enterprise network and an industrial OT network. Nothing on the left appears on the right. Different tenets. We teach our students about confidentiality as the top of the CIA triangle. However, over in the industrial world, I really don't care about your confidentiality of your data. I'm more interested in the availability of activities occurring when they're supposed to. That's how things get manufactured. That's how things get processed. Confidentiality, depending on whether I'm making nuclear quality metal, may be the third level. Different software. We're teaching our students about Windows and Linux and Apples and server OSs. And over in the industrial side, they're dealing with software written by Rockwell and Siemens and Klockner Mueller and these SCADA packages that who knows who wrote those. Some of them are older, almost as old as I am. Different protocols. We know lots about TCP/IP. How much do you know about Modbus, DNP3, BACnet? Oh, by the way, BACnet, you'll find it controlling every major building system in the world. So they have their own specialized network protocol that they run over there. And if you're going to interface with that, then you're going to have to know something about the products and the performance of that protocol. Connectivity, USB, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth on the enterprise side. Who knows what a field bus is? And oh my goodness, it's an RS-232 and 485. Isn't that a dinosaur? And what is Zigbee? So those are all questions that we're not addressing in our traditional IT cybersecurity training. And the truth of the matter is our society runs on these backbones. This is a multi-layer SCADA system producing some process that may be distributed over countries, over several countries. So, and oh, in the vein of Steve Jobs, one more thing. If you look at this OSI model that we traditionally teach in IT, basically every certification course you ever have on networking will have this in it in some form or the other. And we look at the security model on the left, and then we look at this at the exploit type on the right. Look at the top three levels. Those top three levels of the OSI model are social engineering, and social engineering, which all involve people. And I believe Edna talked about the inability to have 100% all the time automated security going on. Well, that's largely because we have lots of humans using the internet. So we need continual training at multiple levels in all of those domains that Edna mentioned. We need to train users. We need to have education to train users. We need our engineering administrators and our IT professionals. They need a continual training at another level because what they did last year will be different than what they're doing this year. So we can't say, oh, now I'm a cybersecurity fill in the blank and never need official training going forward. Picking it up as you go means that you've isolated yourself off in one area of those 20 domains, and there's 19 other domains that are going by you. So anyhow, thank you for your time. I'm good to go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brooks. I think you kind of nailed one point, which has always been in my head, especially as I've grown from a cyber engineer over to my leadership position, is about what you don't know, you cannot protect, right? So you've got to first know to your pictures on the network and what they look like. You've got to know what your network looks like, which, to your point, traditional certifications cannot give you insights into. So it was a very, very interesting perspective on how to go from educated talent to skilled talent, right? Because there's a difference between the two, and a piece of paper, as wonderful as it is, might not serve you when you're in the midst of an incident, right? But knowing where your devices are, where your assets are, and the telemetry around those systems is so fundamental to knowing how to defend your environment. So you said it very nicely. When it comes to a disaster, when everything goes blank, those of us who are used to paying our utilities bills through our cell phones will probably freak out when the internet goes down, but there are bigger systems that we need to worry about. Thank you so much. That was a very, very engaging presentation. With that, we absolutely enjoyed having you. Thank you again. With that, we'll now jump into the next section of our webinar today, which is our panel conversation. And we have Mr. Brooks joining us as well on the panel. And we have two other distinguished industry experts who will also be on the panel. So I'll take a couple of minutes to introduce both of them. And I'll start with Ms. Jen Cohen. Jen brings and makes technology work for business. That's such a true statement about Jen. Since the 1990s, she's helped companies like Toyota Research Institute, Cisco, and Birkenstock adopt these solutions that drive meaningful business results. She's an expert in rebooting inefficient operation teams, establishing world-class best practices to optimize performance. She's also helped several startups modernize their platforms, improving uptime to 99.999% and scaling their operations to prepare for successful acquisitions. She cares about finding the right solutions and ensuring that they work for the end user very, very much. Although getting the technology and processes right is important, Jen truly believes making people successful is really what it comes down to, which is what we've been hearing as a recurring theme in this seminar, which is the people. Her motto is, it's always about the people, and when we value each other and work together, we can accomplish amazing things. Jen is committed to coaching and mentoring people at all levels within an organization, especially women in tech, and maintains and nurtures relationships with former direct reports and colleagues, even years after they've worked together. The currency of trust is truly something she builds across. So a very, very warm welcome to Jen. Thank you for joining us on the panel.
Thank you, Sona, so much. I'm super honored to be here. And I want to echo Edna that my heart is with India in these extraordinarily challenging times. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jen. Our next panelist is Dr. Venkataraman. He's the Associate Dean at the Birla Institute of Technology and Science, Pilani at Hyderabad. He has demonstrated history of working in the higher ed industry with his strong skills in operations management, decision science, and project management. He's been the Associate Dean since August 2018 to now at BITS Hyderabad, leading the digital learning and education research at BITS Pilani. Prior to this, he was the Associate Professor since Jan 2016 on integrated learning programs that helped teach working executives and leading the program committee. He currently heads the critical program on cybersecurity and manufacturing with a special focus on the automotive segment. Welcome, Mr. Venkataraman. It's great to have you here.
Hi, it's really great to join this session, and I would like to say thanks to the United States for helping the Indians at this time of crisis. Looking forward to having this discussion.
Absolutely. May I request Jen, yourself, Mr. Charles, and Mr. Venkataraman to turn on your camera if you haven't already, so the audience can see you as you speak as well. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. We'll now jump straight into our Q&A, and we have some interesting questions. So I'll start with Jen. Jen, as we think about spear phishing and whaling attacks that have been the top threats in 2020, and we all saw that the social engineering bucket was at the top of the list, even in Mr. Brooks's presentation, how do you suggest we protect ourselves against such attacks? And do you see any new trends in 2020 that we should be ready for?
Well, I'll start and say that I think, for all the technology, cybersecurity really is about the people. It's not just my motto about business and technology. It's also with cybersecurity. And I'll share that for those who might not know that spear phishing is really a targeted attack, usually on things like finance or IT folks. And whaling is the most unfortunately named term that is targeted attacks for senior executives. I read a stat recently that said over 90% of cybersecurity attacks, successful ones, started with phishing. And I'm not surprised to see it. We see hundreds of phishing attacks a day, sometimes individually. And at the end of the day, this is a really low-cost way for attackers to gain access. What they want is either access to systems or access to money. And so the first thing I really want to make sure that folks know is that these attacks are really sophisticated. They don't look like they did in the 90s, like it was a 17-year-old in someone's basement. These look, if you look at a bank email and you look at one of these phishing attacks, they can look nearly identical. I think education is key, especially in our populations that are being targeted for financial access, our executives. And I want to give an example of one I've seen 3 times now in the last 5 years, and that is the gift card attack, where somebody will pretend to be the CEO or an executive and email somebody at the company who has access to buy gift cards and say, I'm in an emergency, I'm in a rush, I need you to go buy me these gift cards, and then just scratch the number, you know, the little bit off and send me the number over email. Those have all turned out to be phishing attacks. And in the beginning, they were a little rough. You could kind of tell. They've gotten really sophisticated. They will read about an executive's style of speaking and communicating and leverage that in the attack. So I think educating folks, letting them know that this is how it works is super, super important. The other thing that is critical is if you receive a request, and even if it looks normal for money, for gift card, for an ACH transfer, check it out of band. Don't check it on email, call the person. There's a number of attacks out in the world where money's been transferred and a simple phone call would have confirmed it wasn't actually the person on the other end. We've seen this a number of times, and again, they're so sophisticated. So pick up the phone, and I know in 2021, myself included, don't always want to pick up the phone, but I think checking out of band is absolutely critical. And in terms of will there be new attacks, I think of course, and they'll become more and more clever because the attackers, again, they're not these kids in the basement. These are sophisticated groups they have IT support, they have project managers, they have graphic designers. This is a money-making business. So we need to do the education, but we also need to keep following our best practices. All the boring stuff no one wants to do. We need to do our patching, we need to do our education, because if we don't, it's not just going to be gift card emails. Unfortunately, I think it's going to keep escalating. So we need to keep up that good work and continue it.
So those of you who are listening in, you know, Jen makes a very good point about the phishing templates. So if you have not checked out some of the really cool ones, please do as you run your phishing campaigns for your respective organizations. If you can trick Jen into believing one, then you've really, really gotten it. She's got some serious chops at, you know, this. So she definitely will tell you some colorful stories if you want to hear from her additionally as well. Thank you so much for that, Jen. That was definitely a very interesting viewpoint, and thank you for sharing that with us. Now I'm going to switch over to Mr. Brooks and ask you a question as well. What is your advice on, you know, our major steps that we should take towards securing ourselves as these newer attacks grow, right? You showed a slide with what the top attacks are. Social engineering was there. We've seen attacks where people call and pretend to be people. What do you think are the steps we can take in terms of protecting ourselves in the cyber climate?
Once again, it's a matter of training, but for the general population, that training needs to come back from our professionals. One of the things we like to talk to our schools about when we provide them with a training platform is the possibility of using their students as they progress through their courses to go back out into the population, to community groups, to any kind of gathering of non-IT people that will be using IT equipment to help them better identify those really slick phishing attacks, because they come in all varieties. And there are some keys that non-technical people can use if we have educated them about it. So on all levels, including the general population, it has to be education. I agree with Edna, we can't automate ourselves 100% into security, because human beings, well, if AI continues and the robots take over and they discover that as humans that we are defective and they do us in, then you'll have a secure world. But until then, we are, as humans, are playing in that world, and we have to educate ourselves and educate our cohorts about these things that can happen to them with good examples. And I think our student population might be a very good army to send out back into the community while they're learning to convey these things to these groups in as many environments as they can. For us executives, our IT guys have to keep us continuously trained up also, so that we don't get whaled or spearfish.
Really totally agree with you on that, especially because our filters and our email filters that kind of watch different types and extensions are not clever anymore. But the moment you said robots, I was thinking of a sci-fi next theme that's going to have cyber and sci-fi. So you got me thinking, and I might have a story in my head at this point. So thank you for that very much, Mr. Brooks. I'm now going to switch back to Jen, and I'm going to ask Jen a question on pen testing. So as you know, Jen, as somebody who's reviewed and read a lot of pen tests about the organizations that we've run, they're all point-in-time captures of an organization's security gaps and maturity. How do we make cyber truly continuous? And what are your thoughts around things that have worked for you to make them continuous?
Thanks, Sona. Well, I think we need to start at the beginning. And what I mean by that is we know that folks are coming after money. I mean, that's the number one thing. Sometimes intellectual property as well, but really they want to attack. There are people who have good reasons to do that. We not agree with those reasons, but they have them. And so I start to think about a bank. If you had a bank that didn't have security from the get-go, I think we'd be in trouble. And I think the same thing is true for cybersecurity. Whether we're setting up a business, whether we're making a new application or a new piece of equipment, I think thinking about cybersecurity right from the beginning is important. Continuous is important, but if we don't start right, that's not going to help. So I think that's thing one. Thing two is if that same bank hadn't put security in, we'd be in trouble. But let's say they put security in and they never updated it. I suspect whatever they're protecting for money and lock boxes and so forth would go pretty quickly if they didn't continue the security. So while I think that audits and penetration tests are good, they are a moment in time. So we need to continuously do the right things. And I think it's human nature to want to skip steps, but I don't think we can when it comes to cybersecurity. So that means we need to really think about the different levels of security, whether that's making sure we have multi-factor authentication. So perhaps when you log in, you get the message to, the text message so that it really knows that it's you. We need to think about that. We need to think about the thing no one likes to do, but is critical, and that is patching. I know that patching, updates, everybody sees it as a headache, but I try to see it as somebody turning the key on a lock. It's really important that we do that because otherwise it pops open when we don't patch. And so I think that bank analogy, how do we make sure we're constantly doing that? And I also think when we're developing things, we have to start at the beginning, but it's life cycle management. So if we develop a piece of software, the cybersecurity at the beginning, the cybersecurity as we go through, as we're testing, and because we do this in real life, that we have to make sure that we're constantly scanning our websites, scanning anything that's on the external, even on the internal, to make sure that we're not seeing issues, not just at that moment in time, but continuously. I think, Edna covered it really well in terms of kind of coming up with the different domains and sharing it, with other parties we do work with. So I think that continuity, that there's always effort. It's never one and done with security. It's always ongoing, just like it isn't for the bank ever one and done. And I just want to echo again, Edna, that we know that this isn't just for us. It's really important we ask our suppliers of software, or suppliers of anything. We've seen small vendors have an email attack and have their email taken over and then send it to others. That's another way to get into a bigger organization. So I think we want to really be connecting with our partners to make sure they're secure as well. Hope that helps, Sona.
No, absolutely agree, because we have these conversations in reality all the time. We think about authentication when, we show our card before we withdraw money at the bank, right? But it doesn't stop there. Then when you get to the locker, they make sure you have an account with the bank and so on. So as we build the chain of defense, you're absolutely right. Very, very nicely put, Jen. Thank you so much for that. And now we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit about the opportunities for engineers, which I'm actually going to send to Professor Venkataraman. So the question I have for you, Professor, is as we think of automotive engineers and the sector of automobiles, right, what are the opportunities and challenges that you see? And what would you like to tell us about what's going on in the education industry and your research work around that space?
Okay, that's a very pertinent question when we talk about the cybersecurity. Actually, when we talk about the automotive, the engineering around automotive is converging towards or along with the automotive, the control systems, that is the electronics and the information systems, which has the cybersecurity part in it. Anything that converges will actually lead to a niche segment. So you have a lot of opportunities emerging out of it, because for someone to be an expert in the niche segment, they have to have expertise in more than one field, which is hard to get, at least in the initial stage. So this can actually be an opportunity for the engineers, and we see that there are a lot of people who are showing a lot of interest. But it can also actually create a kind of imbalance in the demand supply for the manufacturers. But I think that that is going to be only a short-term thing. I think very quickly we will see that the knowledge gap or the skill gap is getting filled. But how do we create a knowledge pool from where this organization can draw the talent is something that is what we are working on. As an educator, we have this challenge right in front of us, at least since we started our program on automotive electronics, which is a master's program, a high degree program. The program is built on three verticals, interconnected. One is the automotive mechanisms, which is the mechanical part of the vehicle. The second is the automotive control system, which is based on the electronics, focused on the electronic systems, and the automotive cyber systems. If you look at the other two, that is the automotive mechanisms and the automotive control systems, we can say that it is fairly a matured field, because the science behind it is quite clear. Like you have what you call in an ontological term that a realism, where you have one truth which actually changes over a period of time as we learn more and more. But when it comes to the cyber systems, it's quite different. Like the engineering design, it is even hard to define what is a cyber system, more to talk about the structure of that sector or the knowledge. So what happens is that what we call as a constructivist approach in the ontological terms, like what Charles and the other parties, the panelists mentioned, like it's not something that you will be able to teach in a class. Yes, you need to learn something in the class, but there is a lot more thing that needs to be learned by doing. So this knowledge is actually constructed as they do something with their own hands. And that is the kind of knowledge that we are talking about when we are talking on the cyber systems. So right now it is remaining in the brains of multiple people. Like there is no one person to whom, or a group of people to whom you can go and ask for that kind of a knowledge. I see a lot of participants asking, like, is there a certification? What is the certification and things like that. I know that there is a lot of interest in the people, because they see that this to be one of the niche area where they will be able to find some attractive opportunities. But it is not something that you can earn through a certificate, but you need to actually practice it over a period of time, and then construct your own knowledge is what is going to be the challenge here. So this is actually an interesting problem for us to have. It's keeping us busy these days as to what kind of a pedagogical techniques that we need to adopt for doing this. So what we do is like, in fact, we have been discussing with Charles on creating something like that, which we have also created this side, and Charles is doing it something on the manufacturing side, and we are trying to do it on the automotive side. So I would like to just share one picture. Before that, I would like to just add one more point on the supply chain aspect of this. Like you have this set of students who come from the industries to do this program. They are already working there and it is exclusively meant for them. They're all working in the automotive sector, and there are OEMs who actually manufacture the automotive vehicles, and there are the parts or the system suppliers to them. There is a lot of knowledge gap between the automobile manufacturer and the system suppliers. We see this. So this being a proprietary and an intellectual property of the supplier, they actually want to safeguard that, and even the original equipment manufacturers who are manufacturing the vehicles themselves don't know what is actually going into their vehicle. So for every diagnostic things, they have to go back to the supplier, and there is a lot of trust. What we keep hearing that in the session, there is a lot of trust that needs to be built among them, so that they share what the manufacturer knows what he is building. Otherwise, it will be something like you build something, but you really don't know how it works, and you will not be able to control. And as we go more and more into automation, this is going to be an autonomous vehicle and things like that. This is going to be a very, very important aspect is what. So with that particular piece of advice, that I would like to just share this equipment and briefly tell about what it is. This I was just watching some of the election news this side. So this is an equipment which is actually a steer-by-wire. While this equipment looks pretty simple, what you see here is an actual automotive steering system, and you have a gaming console here. Both of them are synced through a set of wires and certain ECUs and things like that. So what we do is that this is actually a system for demonstrating the control systems of the automotive control system. So what you do is like you actually control this gaming console to control this steering. So how does the information flows through between these two things? This is actually a precursor to designing an autonomous vehicle as to how this controls. So how do we actually bring in the cyber systems into this kind of an equipment is, we know how this information flow takes place between these two steerings. And we have created that information flow and through a set of canvases. What we do is like we actually tap into these wires, take the data out, and you have the interfaces generally available. So you can actually interpret what you are reading there. You can actually manipulate them to create a kind of denial of service when you try to hack this. So we do this as an illustration to the students. And then what we do is like we cannot hand over the system to the students to do whatever they want to do. They can actually break this apart. So what we do is like we actually create a virtual model of this vehicle steering controls, and then give the access to the students through this remote access, so that the students can actually actuate this gaming console and then take control over the steering, the virtual model of the steering, and then do any kind of hacks. So this actually gives them a hands-on as to how do they penetrate, the people penetrate into an automobile system, and how do they actually access, how do they actually find out what kind of a CAN message is flowing and which ID, the CAN ID is meaning for what, and then they will be able to manipulate that. So this is one simple example that I wanted to share. So you have several such systems installed on the site. and all these things can enable the USC round so that they can actually see when they are controlling this equipment, they can see as to what is happening. So these kind of mechanisms where in addition to understanding the architecture, the communication systems and network protocols and things like that, in addition to that, when they actually penetrate into a system which is at real time, their learning becomes a little better. And we hope that through these kind of mechanisms, we'll be able to give them a little bit of rich learning experience. And this can actually lead to creation of a larger pool of talent that can be helpful for the industry is what I want to say. Open for any questions.
Extremely well said, because we definitely especially Jen and I from Toyota, right? We totally understand the value of a simulator, and a lot of safety features come from being able to touch and feel the simulator, because not everybody can be at the track driving some of our really cool cars to test, right? So the role of a simulator kind of takes the notion of seeing is believing and gives you the platform to figure out what could happen. So very nicely put, Professor. So I know we're a little bit short on time, but we could keep you all engaged in multiple conversations and have you all share with us answers on many, many questions. It's been a true pleasure hosting all of you and moderating this panel. I cannot thank you all enough for letting me ask you these questions and join you all in sharing a topic that is so close and special to all of our hearts, which is cyber. So thank you very much, panelists, and over to you, Mr. Srinivasan. I guess he's on. Yeah. He's not yet clicked the mute button. Over to you.
Yeah, it's okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we
can hear you.
Yeah. That was indeed brilliant. What you see in the panelists. Now we move on to the vote of thanks. General Mr. David J. Ranz for having inaugurated this extremely relevant webinar. Thank you, sir. Please convey our profound gratitude and appreciation to your government for the spontaneous help to our country during this pandemic. Our keynote speaker and cyber powerhouse, Edna Conway, thank you for addressing the participants and sharing us your wisdom. Toyota definitely as a solid cyber leader in you, Jen. Thank you for being here with us and showing us how critical it is to think about the people element of cybersecurity. Even hackers are people. Thank you, Jen. Mr. Brooks, what an engaging and relevant presentation. Very insightful on areas of infrastructure we didn't think about. Thank you for joining us today and participating in our webinar. Thanks a lot, Mr. Pillai, for your great participation. Thank you for joining us today, Professor Venkataraman. Thank you for bringing the university's perspective of cyber. An event is as vibrant as the master of ceremony and moderator. Thank you, Sona, for joining us and being a part of the team. Our special gratitude to Naveen of United States Commercial Service of the US Consulate for helping us organize and coordinate this event successfully. Special thanks to Dr. Acharya, our USIIC President of US Chapter, and a special shout out to our Secretary of USIIC, Mr. Robin. Thank you both for all you do. Last but not the least, to all our participants for joining us and listening in today. Thanks everyone. USIIC, along with our speakers, are happy to have given back to our community an event that is open to all of you to attend a webinar with such speakers during the second pandemic. We hope we kept you all engaged and away for a few hours from the situation in India. Thank you all. Thank you very much.